Kediesha Perry, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for joining us. I'm very impressed with some of the things I've read about you, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to share your brief bio with us, and then we can move into some specific questions. I just want to into that you are a journalist, you're a published journalist,
Yes.
and which is very exciting. And I can say I'm always envious of journalists because the knack of writing. So share with us your journey and who you are.
Yeah. So my name is Kediesha Perry. I'm 22 years old. I went to Glenmuir High School and then I moved on to the Caribbean School of Media and Communication, Caramac, at the University of the West Indies, Mona. I graduated last November with honors. Um, but obviously, it's kind of funny because I have 800 published articles, yet I just graduated. So I actually started. I actually started my journey in 2018 when I was a freshman, fresh out of high school, and then that was thanks to one of my lecturers who thought that I had it. I mean, I had just turned 19, but he thought I had it.
Yeah.
So he set up an internship for me at the Observer in December 2018. Did the internship. Obviously, I had to learn when I got there because what did I know about writing for newspapers then? So did the internship for a month in January. They were just like, we're pretty impressed with just stay. And I stayed. So that's how I have 800 and something now
Yeah.
published articles in the Observer because I started pretty young.
Very, very impressive. So one of the things that you mentioned that is very, very important is the fact that your faculty noticed
Yeah.
your talent, your skills, and want to mentor you and to encourage you. And actually, in this the type of organization that we run, we're looking for mentors like that, people who can seek out skills, seek out talents, and kind of encourage students that they have it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was pretty impressed because all I was doing was going to my classes, doing my assignments,
Mm-hmm.
and going back to my dorm. I wasn't doing anything extraordinary in my mind,
In your
but
mind.
thought that I really did have a knack for writing, I guess, because I was always getting straight A's on the assignments. So I said, well,
Mhm.
I guess I'm going to take a hold of this opportunity and just do what I have to do. And I did it. But it wasn't easy because like I said, I didn't have any prior experience. I was just coming from high school. Come on. So when I got there, I remember after writing my first story, the editor was like, "Yeah, this isn't a story. This is how you write." And I cried. I did cry a little bit because my feelings were hurt. It's a
Yes.
rigorous industry, and it's very very fast paced, and they don't really have time to like baby you.
Mhm.
But I reviewed it. Like I took her comments, and I went back, reviewed it. And funny enough, that first ever story was reposted by the Prime Minister on his social media. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay, yep, I can definitely do this then. That was a huge confidence booster. So it
What was
really
it?
that.
What was the very first story? Seeing that
Yeah.
you
So
shared
my,
this.
my very first story, it was about this domestic worker who
Mm-hmm.
only had has hopefully
Mm-hmm.
alive one arm. He lost one of his arms, but he was still showing up every day on the job, and he
Wow.
received an award from
Mm-hmm.
Grace Kelly for his dedication to
Mm-hmm.
family that hired him. um so that was the first day I went to the award ceremony, covered the function, and yeah, that was
That
the
was the
story.
story. And I'm sure you'll never forget it.
I
Are
will
you
never.
one of those journalists at this point now start, taking clips of your story and building a portfolio, maybe
Yeah,
online or
yeah,
actually, by
absolutely,
paper?
absolutely. Every time something comes out for me, it's exciting. The feeling never gets old, to see your bell and you're like, "Wow, I did that." That's
Mm-hmm.
so crazy, and thousands of people can see your name.
Yes,
Feeling will
yes.
never get old. I can only imagine how my parents feel. You're walking on the road or you're driving by, and you see a newspaper vendor selling, and there is my story on the cover. That's your child's name on the cover of the newspaper, casually. So
I'm sure they're very impressed, as I am, just meeting you. And I'm always inspired by stories, especially the journey, as you said, from high school into college and then being mentored and your skills being recognized that way. So that's really excellent. So tell me a bit, we're going to go into your top 10 eventually, but tell me a bit about, for example, with that particular story about the domestic worker losing his arm and still showing perseverance.
Yeah.
How do you appeal? What is the appealing approach within your story to kind of grab people? Because you're saying, well, the Prime Minister of Jamaica,
Yeah.
read the story and kind of retweet it or tweet it somewhere. So is there a particular pathos, language, or the ego? How do you appeal to audience?
Yeah, well, with a story like that, it was definitely ethos. Um, Definitely, because something as outstanding as that. Like, imagine
Yes.
I can't even think about losing an arm. I'm still doing anything. What, like, what? Especially my right arm. Like, that's my dominant arm.
Right.
So for that story, it was definitely an emotional appeal, because it was like, oh my gosh, like, look at this man, he doesn't have all his faculties intact, but he's still able to do this. So while the lead was more emotionally geared, throughout the story, I sort of built it up to provide motivation and inspiration, because I remember during that interview, I did ask him, so what would you say to other persons with disabilities, or not necessarily like physical disabilities, but in any way,
Yes.
you know any hindrance at all, like, what would you say to them? And he was able to provide his 2 cents on why they should keep going no matter what, because you will be recognized, and hard work really always pays off.
Very good. And I'm sure that inspired you as well,
it,
just
it,
listening
it,
to his story.
it did. Just being there was like, wow.
Tell me the stages of getting I know you said, well, it has to be passed on to an editor, for example. But do you have anyone in your circle? Are you part of, say, a journalistic body that, you're getting some type of professional development in, or you're just simply relying on your coworkers and your editors or supervisors to guide it? One, tell me any of those areas that you're involved in, and two, then you can answer the second question of the process of getting approved in order for it to be, even if it's not on the front page, but somewhere in the paper.
Okay, so there isn't a body I'm a part of per se. I mean, there is the Press Association of Jamaica, but they deal with more, like lobbying for us and stuff like that on a national level. So there is no body that I like send my stories to for them to check. No, I just rely on my coworkers and my editor. But at this point, it's really mostly on me, because after 3.5 years, it's like, well, you've been here long enough, so you know what to do. And I think I've gotten a hang of it to a large extent, because in some instances, no corrections are made. Like, what I write is what is published.
Yes.
And you would think after probably the first 100 or 2 that you would get a hang and like know what to do in terms of the process now. So either my editor assigns me a story, or I will see something and I think it's newsworthy, or I try to find an angle in that matter. I do the necessary interviews. Uh, Sometimes it's even for sources, and then I will have to do like additional research if I need to. So if it is a story about the law or anything, like legal related, then I'll have to go to the Constitution, just for example's sake. So when I do that, have all my information, I have to write the story. But I have to find an angle first. So it is the most important thing. Um, what something that would make it unique, something that would make it appealing to the audience, stuff like that. Once I find the lead, which is usually the hardest part, once I find the lead, then we're good to go. We just my brain works like this, like it kind of just pieces things together like a puzzle.
Right.
So like I said, once I get that hook, then I'm just like running smoothly.
Mhm.
My team, I think they're really, really like working with me specifically because I write pretty fast.
Mhm.
I've done stories in 15, 20 minutes. What, as I said, once I get that lead, you cannot hold
You're
me
off.
off. So if
Mhm.
they have something that they want to get done last minute, they'll call me to because they know that I can do it quickly. So we can print the newspaper for the next day. So it's so when I do it, it goes to the editor, to the proofreader. The proofreader will send it back to him if they see any issues.
Mhm.
Sometimes you send it back to me, and you say, "Look at this, like read it over. Look what the proofreaders did." And I say, "Okay, okay," um, and then they send it out. That's how we term it. We send it out for printing. So it's like a back and forth process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. What is your journalistic focus in terms of, are you focusing on these type of emotional
Mhm.
pieces? Are you focused on crime stories, or are you across the board where, whatever subject matters come across, you're just ready for it? You're open to any particular areas, because, and you can address it whether or not there was a particular concentration for your bachelor's degree,
Mhm.
that, like, in other words, if you took courses that
Mhm.
prepared you to write in one particular area.
Well, I'm definitely across the board.
Mhm.
I do not limit myself. I don't believe in limiting myself. I've done so many things. Like this morning, I was reflecting on it before
Mhm.
logging to this meeting, and I was saying, wow, like I've really done so many things. Like I've written entertainment, I've written news, like news, I've
Mhm.
written business, I've written sports, I've written auto, I've done agricultural stuff. Like right across the board. Like there is nothing that I cannot do. So if you need me to go cover the Olympics, I can go cover the Olympics. If you need me to go to a party, I can go to that party. Anything at all. Um, what was the last part of the question?
In terms of,
Mhm.
studying at the university, did you
Yeah.
take any particular concentration courses
Oh,
that gear you?
hmm. Oh no, no, because at Carmack they really tried to make us as rounded as possible. So with my year group in particular, they didn't even allow us to specialize in anything
Mm.
versus the previous groups where they had the choice of doing radio, TV, or print. Like
Yeah.
everybody, everything. I did radio, TV, and print. So there was no particular area of focus.
Focus. Mhm.
So no, we had practice with writing news, writing entertainment, writing blogs, everything. Like I said, we really did everything.
Was there a particular internship that they provided for you, or you have to seek out?
Um, for the most part, they do provide internships for the students. But
Mhm.
if you, for example, if you have some sort of connection at TVJ and you go to them and say, well, I know I can get into this slot here, then they will just do the paperwork and, um,
Mhm.
sign off on it. But for me, obviously, I would have been at Observer for what, 2.5 years. So by the time everybody was seeking out internships, I was there just like, well, I've done 500 stories already. So I guess I'm going, I'm going to do my internship at
Yes.
Observer. So for a period, I was more supervised by my editor, and that was my internship period. But it was still like work normally. So
Yes.
yeah,
Well, that's wonderful. So you just immerse yourself, or you get the chance to immerse yourself almost immediately going through
yeah,
the program, so
um,
that you can just simply, again, as you said, just keep on doing what you're doing.
yeah.
Just with a little quotation, well, I'm in internship at this point, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah. So
exactly.
that's wonderful. So with the you mentioned your team.
Yeah.
Tell us what your day's like now. Okay, tell us what your day's like now in the newsroom, or in the
Yeah.
whatever area that you call it, your cubby,
Yeah.
in order to prepare stories or pitch story ideas?
Okay, so for my department, we start off our days with a morning meeting. So everybody in the editorial department, we have a meeting at 10:30 every morning. And that's where we comb through the day's paper to see all the stories that are out. And
Mm-hmm.
to be honest, I'm just gonna confess, compare them to what's in the Gleaner. So yeah, and it's like, okay, why didn't we have that story? Or oh, we beat them with this story.
Yes.
There are X amount of original stories. We could have done this better, or good job on this. So
Mm-hmm.
start off with that, and then we move to what each person is doing for the next day. So one by one, we tell them what we're working on,
Mm-hmm.
and the executive editors, they sometimes provide pointers as to what would make the story stronger. So we do that, and then they say, well, okay, have a good day, go off your interviews, do your research, meet again
Mm-hmm.
at 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock, to be honest, you should have finished what you said you were gonna do in the morning, right? Now at that point, if something happens, like for example, I don't know, something really huge happens. For example, Vibes Cartel comes out of prison at
Okay.
5 o'clock. Remember, this the paper would have been well on its way to being done because everybody would have finished
Right.
up the stories throughout the day. You know that there's another emergency meeting because
Mm-hmm.
you have to go down to the prison or wherever,
Mm-hmm.
get some pictures, probably try to talk to him or his attorneys or something,
Yes.
and you'd have to reshuffle the paper. And it's funny, but we'll get to that. I was gonna say something, but we'll get to that. So you
Mm-hmm.
have to kind of reorganize because no, that story will become the lead story, like because that's the most appealing thing. You know that people would want to buy the paper to read that story. Um, but I would say like half the time we don't have instances where we have to change up anything.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just how it works. For the rest of the evening, it's really just proofreading, pagination, which is of course the paginators setting up the pages. So they decide along with the editors where the headline should go, where the pictures should go, how they want it to look, what text should be in what which colors, stuff like that before they're sent out to print. But yeah, typically,
How often have you gotten the front page?
man, I I really I cannot tell, like, I'm being honest. Like,
Is it that means it's something, it's a reoccurring thing?
yeah, over these
Oh,
years, yes.
that's
Yes.
great. That's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Thank you.
Because isn't that everybody's dream to get
It
their headline to
it
be
is.
somewhere on the
Yeah,
editorial page as well?
it is.
Because that's where you're saying that this is what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take you back to university. So it's University of the West Indies, and their program, you call it CariMed. But what is it? Go ahead.
So I'm saying it's Caramac, Caribbean School of Media and
CariMac.
Communication,
Yes. So
and I
there's
major in journalism.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
So share with me, are your professors full-time faculties who are just housed within that school of journalism, or
Mm-hmm.
are they professionals themselves who I don't want to use the word moonlight, but who are probably part-time in at the journalism school, but they are well-known journalists, say on TV, or even from Jamaica Observer or the Jamaican Gleaner, or any of the radio news radio network. Who are
Well,
your professors?
my professors, they've all worked professionally, all of them. And
Mhm.
that was just great for us. The person I was telling you about earlier, his name is Dr. Canute James. He even worked at the BBC.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
in yes, yes. So many of them are retired practicing journalists. There was Faye Ellington, I think.
Mhm.
Any Jamaicans know who Faye Ellington is.
Yes.
Excellent. Paula Ann Porter Jones from radio, she taught us
Mhm.
how to speak, stuff like that for our radio course.
Mhm.
There was Trisha Lazarus. She worked in TV for many, 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 like decades.
Mhm.
I'm trying to remember like all my lecturers right now. There was Yvette Rowe. She worked with TVJ for many years as well, producer, but she also did hosting and stuff like that. So she taught us TV.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I said, all my lecturers, they veterans. They spent many years before deciding to give back to us as students at Karamak, and it really did help because they were able to provide their um, real life stories. So
Yeah.
it wasn't just like textbook knowledge. They could say, I remember when I was at JBC. I wasn't even born yet when JBC was around.
Yeah.
When we were at JBC, things were like this.
Mhm.
No, so it was always pretty hands-on. They knew what they were doing and they were able to provide that direction for us. So I don't regret going to Canada.
I'm glad. And I hope they, somebody, one of them will watch this and hear you singing praises to them, because it's wonderful when your professors can get these positive feedback, because we know how it goes sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. No.
Wonderful. So I know you mentioned sources, like checking out your sources and things like that. And you mentioned and use the word also research.
Mhm.
So is there any component of investigative journalism involved with in terms of what you do? In other words, you're going into the field, you investigate, and you try to, expand in terms of the sources and so on. Tell us, what does that look like?
Well, there is some aspect. I think that's well, we did actual investigative journalism for one of our courses. It was dedicated to that. I can't say everybody loved it, and by everybody, I mean me as well. It was tough, it was long, it was extensive. And we did that course for 1 whole year, so you can understand, to work on one story. So
Mhm,
you can understand. So with my day-to-day stories, I guess I would say that we just scratched the surface. So for somebody who has done actual investigative journalism, I
mhm,
understand the time period that one piece will take. So for me, because of time constraints, because obviously you want it for the next day,
mhm, mhm,
we really try to be concise in our research. So um, we will really just try to get the main sources. Whereas with an investigative journalist or an investigative piece, sorry, you
mhm.
would even try to get like some more minute people to talk. Like you would really like get deeper into it. Um,
Mhm.
so that people could see your subject matter from all different angles. Where, as I said, whereas with our stories every day, let's try to scratch the surface, reach out to the main people,
Mhm.
um, do your research online, and try to
Mhm.
wrap it up, be concise, because people don't want to be sitting down reading 1,000 words before a page.
Are there like levels of expectations, meaning, in other words, your editor must check
Yeah.
your sources, sign off on it in order to validate whatever analysis
Yeah.
or research, in order for it to be, or even I'm sure you even have a copyright
Hmm.
editor as
Yeah.
well. So is it, how fast is that turnover in order to get to say, okay, it's legit, let's move on?
Yeah. Well, like I said, we do have a morning meeting, and during those meetings, we mention who we're going to talk to. So we mention what that we're going to do, as well as who we're going to speak to.
Mhm.
And during that time, they're just immediately able to say, okay, that's a good source, or why don't you use this person instead, or combine what you have with their suggestions. So that's how we keep things going pretty quickly, just by meeting in the mornings.
Very, very, very good. And so, do you have any connection then for your stories, or just, in, say, in high places? Are you trying to say, kind of, you know, carve out a niche to say, okay, this person is probably an excellent source for almost any story, and you use that person probably an unnamed source, this person could be that way. How often would this person, your sources, be named or anonymous?
So you're asking how often my sources are named or anonymous, or
Yes. Or
okay.
if it's a possibility where you find that, I mean, in the area where you find you're naming your sources consistently throughout your reports,
Yeah.
or you find that you have to protect the identity of your source.
Well, so personally, I cannot think of many times where I had to keep my sources anonymous,
Mm-hmm.
because with my editor specifically, he always strives to get people who he knows will talk and talk freely. When
Okay.
you say they don't wish to be disclosed, or
Yes.
something like that,
Mm-hmm.
even at Karamak, we learned that in some cases you really do need people that will speak openly,
Yeah.
because otherwise it will compromise your credibility, because anybody could have made that up. Who said they said that? You said that. Why should they trust you? They don't know you. They don't know you. So for me, like I said, I really always strive to get people who I know will talk. In terms of having connections, I can say one thing with this role or this job
Mm-hmm.
is that I have managed to network extensively. Like I think I know somebody from like every sector. So
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for me to pick up my phone
Yeah.
and just text them sometimes, like shoot them a text and they'll text me back. So we don't even have to set up a formal meeting. It has gone to that point, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But it is a process, and as you transition throughout this field, you really do just form connections, form friendships too. You know,
Yes. Yeah.
Many of the prominent attorneys, they know me now. So at first it was, hi, good afternoon, how are you? But no, it's Wagwan, you're good. Yes,
First
literally.
name basis, huh?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Very, very good. So it's clearly mean you're building your portfolio
Hmm.
and you're moving on up. Um, have, have you ever reached any of your story reach? I know Jamaica Observer in a sense because it's now online. You could
Hmm.
say that it's reaching an international audience. However, can you say that any of your stories has been used as a source in any international story, meaning it's picked up by, say, an international source in the US or Canada
Yeah.
or UK and so on?
Hmm. Well, actually, my second story did that. It did cause a lot of conversation within the Jamaica, the diaspora. It
Mhm.
was huge, and I never expected it to be that huge. Um, it was the most read story on the website at that time, and during that period, the Observer had this tracker, so you could see
Mhm.
the amount of views each story's gotten. I mean, like after the first day, it was over 100,000, and
Wow.
yeah, it was huge. Like it was about Buju, and at that time he had just come out of prison, so it was pretty current, and everybody wanted
Yes.
to know what's going on. So
Mhm.
I did have that one story. We're gonna get to that later on, but I did. I will never forget that story in particular. It did cause a lot of stir, and I'm still pretty impressed, because
Pretty.
that was an original story by me, my second ever story during my internship, and it did do the job.
So I just want to remind our viewers watching that may watch that we're talking to Kediesha Perry. She's a journalist at the Jamaica Observer, and she is celebrating publishing over 800 stories. She is one of those exceptional students who was able to just quickly move into her field because she's recognized by her mentors. And so we're talking to her because her story is such an inspiration to many of us. Okay, so welcome back to part 2 of our session with Kediesha Perry, a journalist with the Jamaica Observer in Jamaica, of course. She's celebrating her over 800 published stories, and she's sharing her journey from University of the West Indies School of Journalism to now her current position And so we left off from part one where you were sharing just how recognized you are now.
Yeah.
Building your portfolio in the field, you know, collaboration, being recognized by people in high places, and also the fact that your news story are being picked up internationally, and you name Buju Banton's story as one.
Mm-hmm.
That has actually created a lot of energy and excitement around where you're tracking it. Now, I'm going to give you the opportunity to share your top 10 stories. You know, ranking from, you know, I'm sure all of them. I struggle to find the words to describe, okay, because we don't want to say they're not important. They're all are important. But what it means to you in terms of, you know, why you rank it. I know you mentioned one of the first one with the young domestic worker who lost his arm. That's one. I don't know if it's in this top 10, especially with so many stories. How do you keep track? But you decide if you start at number 10 or you decided at one, it's up to you.
Well, I didn't even think about it like that. When I compiled the list, it was really just, okay, 10 stories, not
10 stories. Okay.
Yeah, not more significant to least significant, but sorry. So for the list, I actually have the Buju story at number one here. And it was headlined "Glad for Bujas," like GLAD. And that stood for this gay rights group in Barbados. So let me tell you, to summarize that story, at the time, many other news outlets were saying that they were calling on that human rights group.
Yes.
Was calling on Buju to denounce his song Boom Bye Bye, right? That's what they were saying. So now I started on Instagram. Remember, I was doing my little internship. It was Christmas Eve 2018. I'm in the office. I started on Instagram and I was like, okay, this is interesting. This is something I could do.
Yeah.
So I decided to reach out to the founder of that group in Barbados. I was using a lot of faith because I didn't expect her to reach out to me. I sent an email to, come on, it's Christmas Eve. Who's going to be checking an email on Friday afternoon? It's Christmas Eve. Sent it out, sent the questions to her, and she responded in like an hour. And I was like, oh my gosh, what?
Yeah.
So I did the story and I sent it to my editor, and he was like, wait, where's your name again? Because I was still pretty new. And I told him, and he was like, no, I have to stand up, I have to give you a hug. And he was like, this story is wicked, so we have to change up the paper now. Yeah, we had a lead, but this is the strongest story. Yeah. So we have to switch up the paper now to make this the lead story. And I think at the time I was just in shock, like in awe. I didn't know what to say, because what do you mean? I just did a little story. What do you mean?
Right.
And he said, he asked me who my lecturer was, and I told him, and he said, said the Monday know how to pick winners, hug you again, like, and he kept hugging me and saying, it's so good, you did a good job. So that story came out Christmas Day 2018. We'll never forget it. Glad for Buju. Definitely number one on the list. Now, the second one I have is Kanye Rocks Kingston. And so that was actually the first story I had that came on the cover like cover story.
Yeah.
Okay. At that time, Kanye had visited Jamaica for his, Sunday service. So he brought his choir with him. And thousands of Jamaicans went to that event at the Emancipation Park. It was so packed. That day I had a mid-semester exam. And while I was going to that exam, they said, well, you need to send off the story while you're there. So in my mind, I was like, what do you mean send it off while I'm there? They meant go to the event, speak to your sources, write down what you see, paint a picture, and do it on your phone and send us. Like, we need it in real time. So that was the first time I did something like that. I had to, you can just imagine how hectic it was to be pushing and shoving and yelling, introducing myself and stuff like that, and to be writing in that situation. But I did it, and I never expected it to come out on the cover. So the next day when I saw it, I was like, wow, okay, I guess it was good then. I didn't get any corrections or anything. It was on the cover. Huge deal. We'll never forget that day. The other story on the list is the most successful carnival, says Bartlett. No, this was my first Carnival Road March. It was pretty intense. I remember the night before I was kind of freaking out because can you imagine seeing like 50,000 Jamaicans and you're in the midst of 50,000 people? Right. But I was fortunate to have been the only journalist at Carnival Road March 2019 to have spoken to the Minister of Tourism, Edmund Bartlett. So that made my story the strongest story. And he was able to say that this was Jamaica's biggest carnival in history. And, you know, provided some figures as to why it was so, the number of rooms that were sold out. And of course, like the implications for the Jamaican economy. So I will never forget that story. And I'll never forget the experience. But once I got out there, it was pretty easy because you're interacting with the people and everybody's just so happy, probably because they were drunk, but everybody was so happy and it was a nice vibe. Yeah. The other story on the list is Learner's Rush Hour. And this was my first auto story. And this spoke to the influx in people trying to get their learner's license before some added requirements and also like the increasing cost too. So I remember that day particular when I did that story, the tax office at Crossroads, for example, the line was long, it was crazy. The line was outside on the street and wrapped, it was madness. That too came on the cover, another cover story, my first author story came on the cover. So that was a huge moment for me. The other story, Toni Ann ready for extended role. Toni Ann meaning Toni Ann Singh, Jamaica's Miss World. And you know that she created history by serving 2 years because they had to cancel.
Because of the pandemic, huh?
The pandemic, they had to cancel the subsequent coronation that she would have handed over the crown at. So I spoke to her father, you know, to get a feel of that. And he was pretty proud of her, you know, a little girl from St. Thomas, and she was able to do that. And it was a big win for Jamaica too. So I was fortunate to have been at a celebration for her when she returned and be up close with her and talk to her. Very, very lovely, kind spirit. This other story, you know, Netflix actually reached out to me. So yes, I was going through my email and I see something pop up from Netflix and I'm like, who gave somebody at Netflix my email? Like to this day, I don't know. But they wanted me to interview one of their actresses about her Christmas movie. Her name is Nia Fairweather. And the headline for that story was Nia Tells Christmas Story. Of course, I wasn't going to say no. I was like, yes, let's set up this interview. So I did that story with somebody from Netflix. She has her own movie on Netflix. And I think I'm going to watch that movie today, you know, because it's pretty cool when you're able to like watch something.
Talk to the person, right?
I spoke to that person. That's
exactly.
Pretty interesting. I was very grateful for that opportunity. As I said, I still don't know who gave my contact to somebody at Netflix, but I really do appreciate that. And it's one of those stories that I really did hold dear to my heart. When I graduated, I did this shoot that was kind of geared towards showing off some of my best stories. And that story was one of the articles that I did decide to put on display. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch that movie again today. The other story is Hansel's rebirth, and Hansel meaning Hansel Parchment. hurdler.
Jamaican
Gold,
runner.
yes, gold medalist. That was my first sports article, and it came on the cover. So another cover story.
Mhm.
I always said that prior to this story, I would never do sports because it's sports, and I don't want to be stereotypical, but I never had any huge interest in doing sports. But I did that story,
Mhm.
and it came on the cover. And after that, I thought, well, I'm never going to limit myself again or never say never, because at that point I would have done news, I would have done auto, I
Mhm.
would have done entertainment, and I was doing sports now. So I said, well, I'm not going to put any limitations on what I can do because clearly I can do everything. So yeah, um, I I really did enjoy
Mhm.
that story. The other story, um, Marcus James stays focused. Now, Marcus James has Jamaican roots because his parents are Jamaican, but he has acted in Game of Thrones. He has come in Law and Order. He has come in this Lifetime movie too.
Mhm.
So very extensive. Again, another big moment for me because first it was Netflix, and then we're moving over to Game of Thrones and Lifetime. I watched Lifetime. I was like, okay, yeah, this
Right.
is um unfortunately this was kind of a sad story because it was about him losing his parents,
Oh.
like one behind the other, to COVID. So
Mhm.
it was just like about him persevering nonetheless. And
Yeah.
he also talked about what he loves most about Jamaica, his Jamaican heritage, how that helps him in Hollywood. And he did say that before every audition, he listens to some dance hall and he really gets him in the groove. The
Yeah.
more you know, the more you know.
More.
Um, and the other story now, more cops to hit streets. This was an author story, it was an author lead, and it was something that I held very dear to my heart because for some reason at that time there were so many abductions happening in Jamaica,
Mm.
with women particularly.
Mhm.
And so I saw it and I was thinking, well, what's going on? I need to do a story talking to an expert about what women can do to safeguard themselves some more,
Yeah.
because this it was getting out of hand. It was like a trend at that time in Jamaica. So I did talk to the SSP, SSP Lindsay, and she was able to provide some tips for women. And that was an auto lead, like I said, and she did say that more police officers were going to be deployed to kind of help with that situation because they did notice the rise in abductions against with women.
Mhm.
So it's very, very special story to me. And the 10th story is going to be my 800th story, which came out this week.
Mhm.
Yes, life's lessons from QQ. I think everybody knows who QQ is, and if you don't know who QQ is, then go
Then
do your research, because I mean QQ, he's been in the game forever, almost 20 years. He's now 28, and he's been doing this since 10 years old. He's had some hit songs and still in the game. So it
Mhm.
was really about his journey
Mhm.
years, as a child star transitioning to teenage and now a grown man,
Mhm.
and what being in the industry this long has taught him. And you know, it was just pretty special to me. And like I said, it was my 800th, so of course it was extra special. But
Special.
yes, so
That is
that's
such
my
a, go ahead.
no man.
Yeah, that is, these are some very, very interesting stories. And it's not just from the list here, it's not just stories that seems to be only capturing the audience in Jamaica, but it's capturing the audience, I would think, on an international scale, especially, for example, the Buju story, that and the Kanye story,
Mhm.
because that was something, the fact that he was down there trying to, some people say, re-energize his career, trying to create a reggae album per se, and those type of things. So those are stories that would reach a wider audience beyond the periphery of Jamaica. So you really are onto something here. And then in fact that you're being sought out by Netflix. Now, one of the things that I want you to explain is, do you sign up to be a correspondent for any newspaper overseas or any kind of media outlet? Because sometimes I've seen it and I've talked to a few people who they will say, oh, just like Netflix reach out to you, oh, this, CNN reach out and say they're asking me to be their correspondent for a particular breaking story that is happening on the ground. Do you have that experience where you're signing up to be correspondent in that way, written, by writing?
Yeah. So it's not concrete yet, but this news entity in Barbados actually reached out to me recently, and they said that they wanted to form this sort of relationship within the Caribbean. So the different islands would have, or the select islands would have correspondents to kind of, like help them out covering certain stories since we're already on the ground. So they did indicate interest in doing that, and I said, well, when you're ready to make it a thing in writing, yeah, of course.
Right.
But it should launch pretty soon, where I will become like an official correspondent with them in terms of like other writing for other publications abroad. I did this freelance gig with a website. So it was founded in Canada, and the owner is based in Canada as well, but her thing was mostly about films, So what I was required to do was to present an original pitch, and then she would say, okay, I like this, and then did the interviews, wrote articles, sent it to her. She provided pointers, sent it back to me, and then I did the final thing, sent it back to her, and actually did get some stuff published. I think that was my first time going so in depth with like movie productions and stuff. My pitch was about the issues that regional filmmakers were having in getting their work noticed on like a global scale, because I think that Jamaica has so much potential in terms of like our film industry. I love to watch Jamaican films, and I was thinking, well, why don't we have, why are we getting noticed? What's the problem? So
why don't we have our own, more like a Caribbean award show,
exactly.
more of a platform to do distribution and publishing and all. Yes, I agree.
So like I really wanted to know if it was an issue where they don't have enough investors, and they did say it was primarily investment issues.
Right.
But I'm trying to like pick my brain to see. I've done freelance work here and there, but in terms of being like an official correspondent, not yet. But it's loading.
It's in the works.
Yes.
And I'm sure with just the access to be able to be noticeable, more noticeable on social media, the opportunity is probably closer than you think. So let me ask you, and I know I'm going to wind down because I don't want to, I know your time is precious to you as well. But let me ask you a couple more questions in terms of controversy. Out of all those stories that have been published, you have your fact checkers, you have your editors, you have your copyright people, making sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed. Has there been any story that has been controversial within itself where you have to republish, make a statement to clarify, to correct, or it's just smooth sailing?
Well, immediately one story jumps out in my mind. I remember doing a story about SANS, the party, in 2019, and it was about a shooting that happened at SANS in Canada, right? I think about 3 people were injured because of this shooting. I reached out to the promoters of the event. They declined to comment. So what I had to do was to simply report that 3 people were injured. I couldn't say much because they didn't want to talk to me.
Right.
To story came out and they were livid. The promoters were livid. They were saying, why would you do that? You are tarnishing our brand. We're going to sue you. Why would you do that? And I said, well, but I am reporting the facts. Did these three people not get injured? Yes, they did. They went to the hospital. They came out and said it themselves on social media. I said nothing wrong. And for a brand that was birthed in Jamaica, it was relevant to us. So yeah, I'm gonna write the story, but they were so upset. Their friends were upset, their families were upset. I got death threats. It was
Wow.
I did.
Definitely controversial.
Yeah, and my editor was saying, well, if they want to sue, tell them to sue. What are they going to sue for? Because we have our facts here, and I did have evidence to suggest that I did try reaching out to them.
Yeah.
So if you want to take it to court, well, let's go to court. But they didn't. It really just ended with them going off and threatening me and saying a lot of derogatory things, but it was fine.
Well, I'm glad you're kept safe. I'm glad you're protected, because I know one of the things I wanted to ask you too is it, you mentioned about writing, even or talking to people who are in the movie industry and so on. Do you think, is there an easy transition from writing for public consumption in a way, where you're, writing about facts versus writing about fiction?
And easy. Well, for me, it's easy because writing was always my niche, So I would have started out writing fiction from school when you were when you were tasked with writing descriptive pieces or prose. So you had to write actual stories, even for CSEC, we were told to write a story based on a picture. So for me, writing is just such an umbrella term. If I'm writing, I'm writing. I write everything. I write speeches, I write essays, I write debates, I write articles. So I think that I'm pretty fortunate, pretty blessed to be able to sort of just immerse myself in whatever I'm writing. Nothing is hard. Like if I'm writing, I'm just writing. And it's there's
And
not
being able to transition and can transition from one
I
topic
can just snap out of it
to
easily.
the
And I suppose I could not have had a better job because it's pretty simple.
What would put you on the, you said the public broadcasting of Jamaica list? What would put you on that list? Because I know some of the journalists that you mentioned that are the veterans in the School of Journalism at UWI. They some of them may have received awards and recognition in that way. What would put you on the list? Have you looked into those criteria to situate yourself on that path?
So every year, the Press Association of Jamaica, they do have an awards with various categories. The company, they go through your work, or you can recommend certain pieces that you think would fit in whatever category, and they enter you. So yes, and this year I'm of course going to go back to drawing board, see what I did, see what fits in what category, and try my luck. So yeah,
okay.
Yeah, they do have various awards for us.
What would be your message? And this is my last question to you, to see the way that you describe your journey seems so clear, so crisp, fresh, put it that way. Because sometimes, when anyone, try to describe their journey through to their whatever career they carve out, it is not as clear as the way you describe it. And it seems clear to me just by the very fact you have such foundation from school to, from public school to college. So what is your message to young people? Because this is geared to, my organization is geared towards helping young people find their path, find themselves, finding resources, finding answers. Tell them, share with them what they should do in order to get to where you are at this point and even beyond.
Well, everybody's journey is different. So even if I were supposed to give somebody a blueprint, it still would go that way because
Mhm.
I believe that everybody's destinies and their journeys are just like unique and pre-written, to be honest, even though that's probably arguable, but that's what I believe. Um, in terms of getting though to a point where you can say, I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of the work that I did. The main thing is first believing in yourself. Unfortunately, I can't say that I believed in myself because I didn't think I was anything special, but somebody thankfully saw that in me first. You have
Mhm.
to believe in yourself. You
Mhm.
have to know what you want and you have to set out after that. And I know that there are going to be multiple challenges along the way.
Mhm.
It wasn't easy for me because, like I said, my first ever story wasn't even a story. My editor said, yeah, this is the story, you need to do it over. And I was pretty disheartened, but I wasn't going to give up. I had the opportunity and I was going to make the most of the opportunity. So I had to go back,
Mhm.
take a deep breath, start again. When you encounter these challenges, it's important for you to not take it personally because it isn't an indication that you aren't good enough. It just means that you made a mistake here and there, and now you're starting from a place of experience. So you're able to start again and thrive. You know, it's
Yeah.
always to take that leap
Mhm.
and fail rather than saying, what if? Like, what would have happened if I did that? Why didn't I do that? You know,
Mhm.
so remain determined no matter the obstacles that come your way. You just have to know what you want. So from day to day, what I try to do is envision my end goal. So if I'm overwhelmed and I have, say, 5 stories to do, I'm thinking, well, this is hard. Like, this is tough. I'm tired. I want to go to bed. I'm hungry. I don't want to do this. I don't have the motivation. But I think about the end result. I think about my audience. I think about the people that are going to be impacted. I think about the fact that these stories are possible lead stories.
Yeah.
You know, I think about the recognition and I think about the impact that they will make. And that just pushes me. I'm like, okay, well, we just have to do it. Do
Mhm.
what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. So if you want to watch on Netflix, just do what you have to do first.
Yes.
So push through, believe in yourself. Um, ensure that you have at least one person who will be able to like provide that extra support for you. And if you don't per se, I think that it's always great to have faith. I'm a pretty religious person. Like, I pray a lot. I
Mhm.
really do. I talk to God like right throughout, and I ask him for guidance. I ask him for his comfort, his grace, and it helps me so much. It really calms me down.
Mhm.
So just believe in yourself, keep pushing, keep going, never give up. Nothing is like in life is easy, but it is up to you to choose your hard. Do you want to stay stagnant and choose that hard,
Mhm.
or do you want to be in a position where, oh my gosh, the work is so hard, I can't do this, but you know, say you can do it, you're just lacking motivation? Choose your hard. Do you
Choose.
want to be stagnant, or do you want to reach a place of success? What do you want to do?
Such an excellent message and such a very, very good point to end on. And I like the way you started it. You said everybody's path is different
Mhm.
because nowadays, especially for young people, are so easily influenced with all the social media.
Absolutely.
They are so burdened by their identity. Who am I? Who do I want to be? And so, yes, everybody's journey is different. You can give broad messages, and then you just have to take for it to make it, make it your home.
Absolutely.
Kediesha Perry, I thank you so much. It's
Thank
been
you
very
so much for
refreshing.
having me.
Yes, and very fluent, and I learned so much. And I know we could talk on and on
Mhm.
because I can see how your mind works. You have the ideas, and it just keep going and going. So,
Absolutely.
so thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to do this. And it's possible that we can talk again because there
Of
could be a
course.
particular story that just one story that we could delve right into and just keep talking about it. Because I'm getting a hint of philosophy there. Philosophy and faith and religion and all those components that make you shine and make who you are. And thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.